Welcome to the Exit Strategy, your no bullshit guide to divorce with the experienced attorneys from New Direction Family Law. Unfiltered discussions to help you move from victim to victorious and from bitter to better.
Hi, everyone. It's Elizabeth Stevenson, a partner at New Direction Family Law, and I have one of our other law partners here, Ashley Oldham, with us today.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Sure, anytime. And Cam?
Yes, I'm back again. I think today we're going to kind of talk about some stuff that falls a little bit more on the front end, new client side of things where I live usually, and talking about how to choose the right attorney for you, and what all goes into that. So I know, at least for me, when we get phone calls and when our intake specialist is working with folks, we find that a lot of times people have never done this before, right? Like this is the first time they've ever gone through a divorce, most of the time. And they're just so nervous about making a wrong decision or going about things the wrong way.
It's a big decision.
It is, yeah.
Too. I think just overall, I think it becomes almost a personal relationship. So it's not, you got to build that trust, and you have to have, you have to be able to work well and interact well with whoever your attorney is. I mean, it's just a lot of it's about style, I think, sometimes.
Just one of the reasons why the initial consultation is so important,
I think so,
right?
too.
That's, your full hour to sit down and really make sure that attorney has the right experience for what you need, and also that you're a good fit, that you have a rapport, and that both parties feel comfortable.
Yeah, I definitely think, consultation with an attorney is a great place to start, and not, just with whoever answers the phone.
Right. So you are on the front. I always do an analogy that's like a restaurant. You're the front end of the house. You take the reservations. You get people in the door. So when people call, what happens?
Yeah. So I mean, we certainly, typical, standard customer service things, super warm greeting, making sure that the caller on the other end of the line has got a little bit of peace of mind about, that they can trust us with the details, that we're going to, repeat back the email address, little things like that show that we want to make sure that we have everything exactly right. And we also want to make sure that they know the next steps and that they're very clear, because it's very confusing. If you're talking to other people outside of your attorney's office about this process, everybody's got an opinion, right? And, or recommendations, and really just, it's a different scenario for everybody. And so when they call, we just want to make sure that they feel confident, and we're going to walk them through the next steps. And when they get to meet with their attorney, that they're going to get their questions answered, at least to the extent of what's most pressing for them, and understanding the attorney that they're working with, if it's going to be the right fit for them, personality wise and things like that. So,
and so it's hard, because do you get asked on the phone? I've never met you. I don't. And Alyssa is our intake specialist. Is she going to ask me like really personal questions?
I think it depends on what you consider a personal question. We don't dive deep into finances or anything like that on the call. We just want to hear mostly from you what your pain points are, what your goal is behind working with an attorney, so that we can make sure that we can appropriately assist you. And we also want to make sure, or we also just kind of want to check, some technical details, that you're in a county that we practice in, and some things like that. So yeah, it doesn't get too personal.
People get concerned because of all the names we ask for, right? We're going to ask for your full name. We're going to ask for your spouse's name. If there's a third party involved, if there's been an affair of some type, for example, we ask that person's name, not because we're going to go look you up on Facebook or social media or spread your name around, right? But it's because it's a requirement of the state bar. And we have very strict requirements that we have to follow to keep our licenses, and to make sure we're doing the right thing, and not meeting with you and also meeting with your spouse, right? So it's not because we want to get too much into your business, but it's because of what we have to do the job.
Yeah, make sure there's no conflict of interest.
And I actually had in one of my initial consults today, and people ask me this quite often, if my, ex or soon to be ex calls up here, do I need to tell them that I've come to see you? It's like, oh, absolutely not. Even if they do call up here, we're just going to say, sorry, unable to help. Not going to say why, never say you were here.
Yep.
That's confidential between you and me. So, I want to make sure that people understand that what you tell us stays with us. But in an initial consultation, I will always say, if you're not honest with us, we can't help you.
Right.
Yes.
And you won't tell us anything that we have not heard
Oh, no.
before. I can guarantee
Right.
you that.
Yes. And, coming into family law from another law area, my first, 60 days or so, I was like, oh, really? Really? Constantly getting new information and approached with different scenarios and stuff like that. But as time has gone on, yeah.
Right. And it's and we hear it, but it is the first time that they're experiencing
course,
it.
yeah.
So it is a big pain point for them. But, between all of us, what have we got? I got 25 years of experience. What do you got, Ashley?
15.
Yeah. And
I did the math
Uh,
the other day.
what
The
is the
whole
math?
attorney team
Uh-huh.
is just a bit over 80 years combined.
So
Yeah.
so we've heard it, we've been there, we've had that scenario, and we can help you if you will share with us all the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's important for us to hear it to give you good legal advice.
Yeah, I think so too. I think I sat in on a consultation with you, and I heard you tell somebody, as you think of these one-off little things, write them down, because, the consultation's about an hour, and, certainly once we engage with someone, we're kind of on the clock, for hourly billing, and it's hard to remember lots of little details. Once you're sitting in an attorney's office and across the table from them.
No pressure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's definitely helpful for us, at least, jot down the details as you think of them, or questions as you think of them to ask the attorney.
Right. And I would say come in with questions. I always ask folks, we'll walk through sort of what we're doing, and then it's like, what else can I answer for you today? And I love it when people have a list of questions.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Important. It also helps streamline the process even when, later on, once you get past the consultation, after they retain, because we do hourly billing, it's going to cost you a whole lot more if you send 10 separate emails with 10 separate questions, right? Try to jot your questions down, jot your issues down, and let's set a meeting, or, let's set a phone call, or have one succinct email. We want to streamline it as much as you do.
Right.
Yeah.
And so in an initial consultation, once you talk to Melissa or Cam, they'll set you time to come and talk to one of our attorneys. And then I think we all have a different style of how that is. I sort of generally introduce myself, but then I want some backstory. I want to know not only, let's start here today, back me up and tell me about your marriage, tell me about the parenting responsibilities, and then how we got here today. And sometimes that's the first time people have really talked about it. Or if we're talking about an abusive marriage or a narcissist, and it's overwhelming sometimes for people to talk about it. So you sort of have to take the pace of the person that's in the room, and help them sort of walk through that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one question that always tends to come up on an initial call is, well, I was recommended to this attorney or that attorney, and I read about this person online. Can you tell me, what they're like? And so we do our best in the intake side of things when we can to try to match, if somebody's really direct with me and says, listen, I need, somebody that's going to just give it to me straight, and, I don't need my hand held, and I just, need the facts because I'm trying to compartmentalize here,
Right.
then, we try to get them with someone who can do that for them. So,
Right.
and then some people are very emotional and need the extra hand holding or want the extra hand holding.
Right. And they may start out very factual, but as time goes on, they may need some more handholding.
Yeah.
So I think we're all sort of versed in that this is really hard for people, and that a lot of times we sit in people's pain every day, and that's just our job, and we'll take it, and if it takes it off of you, we're happy to do that. But you got to be healthy too to help us work through this process.
Yeah. And that's where the experience comes into play, I think.
And like you said, we got to have all the information, right? You got to be honest with us, and it may seem like we ask a lot of questions in that initial appointment, but it's because divorce isn't one size fits all, right? Every case is different. Your friends, your sisters, whoever's divorced, Google's divorce is going to look a lot different than yours.
Attorney Google.
Right? And we cannot give you the best answers for your situation if we don't have all the information.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one of the really common, questions that comes up a lot, when you're trying to choose an attorney and there's just a lot of uncertainty out there is financial. Like, people want to know, what is this going to cost me so I can start preparing? They want a number so that they can, kind of have something concrete to hang on to. And so we explain retainer fees a lot over and over,
Right.
and kind of how that works.
My general response is, do you know what attorney's on the other side? Mm-hmm. And it depends on how cooperative your ex is.
Right.
I mean, literally, that's what it will
and how organized you are.
That's true.
Am I going to have to chase you down for documents? Are you going to, complain about producing 6 months, 12 months worth of your bank statements to the point that, we have to send multiple emails, multiple phone calls about it? Or are you going to produce them to me? Are you going to produce them to me in an organized manner? Or am I going to have to sift through paper copies and scan them in?
Right.
I feel like we could do a whole nother episode on how to keep your bill down.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great, I think.
Put me on that one.
Yeah. And I think we should, because I had somebody come in the other day with a big suitcase full of stuff, but she wasn't in a place where she could do it.
Yeah, it's
so
early,
it was so overwhelming that she couldn't do it. So we're happy to do it for you, but it is going to cost you more for us to sit and do that for sure.
Yeah,
one of my very first cases right out of law school, with my first ED case, the guy brought in a trash bag full of unopened mail and random statements and just dumped it all on my desk. That's where we started.
But if you do have, especially if they're financial support or property division, it is going to be document heavy at the beginning. Even if you're not litigate, like if you, let's say you file a complaint, we're starting a lawsuit for property division, alimony, and child support. Mm-hmm. Our local rules provide that you have to provide certain documents to us and we have to provide them to the other side and vice versa. Mm-hmm. There are forms you have to fill out. So there is a lot of work that goes into the front end. And we all have a paralegal, but quite frankly, I need to look through your bank statements. I need to look through your credit card statements. That gives me a feel of what's happening. So it's just going to be, if we quote you a retainer of $10,000, $5,000, that doesn't mean that's what the case is going to cost. That means that's going to get us up and running, get our feet on the ground, and get us a place where maybe we can sit down and do a deep dive and say, here's where we think we are.
Yeah.
Here's how the property should be divided. Here's how much we think you should have for support.
Hey guys, it's Cam with New Direction Family Law. Let's face it, divorce affects a lot of people, myself included. My parents were divorced. I've been there. There's no easy way around it. It just sucks. But determining the finances of one household splitting into two can be one of the most stressful issues of divorce. Will alimony or child support have to be paid? Who gets the house and the cars? Who has to pay all the credit card debt or any other debt? Do I get to keep all of my retirement? These are all important questions that you need answered going into a divorce. And it's so important that you're represented by an experienced family law attorney that can answer these questions for you and help you develop a plan specifically for you and your situation to move forward. New Direction Family Law has over 80 years of experience protecting the rights of our clients when going through a divorce. We aggressively advocate, we support and educate our clients to achieve the best possible outcomes. So give us a call today to schedule an initial consultation at 919-719-3470. You can click the link in the episode description, or you can reach out to us on our website at newdirectionfamilylaw.com. Back to your point, like the more honest the person across the table from us or y'all is, the more accurate we can be on this is how long things are going to take, or what
exactly
whatnot. So
exactly, or we may have to do some depositions, or we have to send out subpoenas or something like that. Or you're sitting with me, you're the dependent spouse, we're talking about alimony, we spent months, and then I've had this happen 2 months. I need to tell you something. That I've had, that I had I had sex outside my marriage, I had an affair. Well, I'm sorry, then you were probably barred from, and we spent all this money trying to do support.
Oh, shoot.
Yep, it's happened to everyone. It's happened to all of us.
Ain't that some shit?
Ain't that some shit? That's right.
It's a hard thing to admit, right?
Absolutely.
If you think no one else knows, or you're embarrassed, you shouldn't be. But I can see where it's a hard thing to talk about.
But that's time wasted that we could have focused on something else. And I agree. That's why it's so important to just be honest about it. We're in no judgment zone, believe me. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. We've hear quite a bit. Not going to surprise us.
Yeah. Other things for an initial consultation: if you have a separation agreement, if you have a prenup, if you have a postnup, if you have a court order, I can't give you legal advice if you're talking about modifying or changing those if I don't have those documents in front of me. And like I'm in the middle of a case now where I have a separation agreement, but nobody can find a signed copy of it. because it's 10 years old, 15
Right,
years
yep.
old. And so that makes it difficult, but court orders, we can certainly help you track those down and sorts of things, but that's really important to have in a consultation.
Yeah, I mean, I think legal document organizing is something that everybody should do. If you've signed a contract or been presented with a contract or, custody agreements and stuff like that, you should have a spot to put those things.
Right. But some people don't, so that can hurt your case. I can't file a breach of contract on your post-nut because I don't have a signed contract.
Yep.
Right.
So it's really important.
It is. So for the two of you personally, anything else that you feel like would be important to share about, selecting an attorney or a firm to go with?
I've had clients where it's just like anybody else. You don't get along. You don't like everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And I have had clients where you weren't a fit, and I want people to go get the best results that they can. So if I'm not it, I'm absolutely okay with this. We're here for you, but if it's not 100% what you want, you're the person that's life is being changed, and we are here to help, and we don't take it personally, and people will come to us from other attorneys. So it's not, it really is sort of an ongoing, sort of fluid relationship for people, I think.
Yeah, and just be prepared. Take it seriously.
Yeah.
Think, in advance what you want to know about the attorney. If you have questions about their experience, how long they've been practicing, have they done military divorce before,
Correct.
for example, or something of the more complex deferred benefits, RSUs, stock options, that
Right.
kind of thing. But also what you want to know and what questions are important to you. What do you want to talk about? Giving it some thought before you just walk into the office can really make sure that you get the most out of that initial consultation.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think to your point, what you were saying, when folks call us, and we might figure out during the initial call before you ever meet with an attorney that you need something different, and so I think it is really important to us, to our firm, to be a resource even when it can't be us.
Right.
Folks call us and they're looking for assistance in the mountains or on the coast, and we don't practice in those counties. So we're going to refer them to somebody that we trust that does. And, as a follow-up from a consultation, if there's, more resources that they need, recommendations for therapists or
Absolutely.
Interact or whatever it may be, like we're going to tee them up and provide them with that information. So
Right.
I
And
think,
so after the consultation, what happens, Cam? What
so-
can they expect?
yeah. So, when you schedule your consultation, as soon as we get off the phone, they get an email with additional questions to help our attorneys prepare for the initial consultation. And then there's a spot to upload the documents that you were
Right.
talking about. So whatever you think that the attorney needs to see, and we try to help guide them through that a little bit, on the phone. So we give them examples like, you said your spouse is stepping out on you, send text messages, send things like
Right.
that you have, like any kind of documents, and we'll start adding it to your file. It may not be relevant for the first conversation, but we're going to get it in your file and we're going to get it going.
Right.
And then at the consultation, we're always going to, the attorney is going to help guide us based on how that conversation goes, on what kind of additional resources you might need if you're ready to move forward or need a little bit more time to consider things. And we'll follow up from there. And we'll check in periodically. And if at any point it becomes too much, we just take a step back. And, we definitely believe in that transparent communication and making sure that everybody knows what's coming next.
Right. And a lot of people, when they walk in for an initial consultation, are not ready to move forward. They're just gathering information and knowledge. And we always encourage people to come and do that. Even if it's 6 months down the road and you call us back, we're still here. We're not going anywhere. We're happy
Yeah.
to help.
Yep.
Exactly.
I'm one of those people. I absorb information, and then 6 weeks later, I might come back and be like, hey.
Right. Exactly. So anything else? What else? Anything else? So we can answer that you hear daily on initial consultations?
I think we've touched on most of it. I just think, if there's any one big takeaway, I think that I have from this conversation, and I hope everybody else that's listening does also, is, we know that you're overwhelmed. We know that everybody's a little bit different and has a little bit different scenario. And so let us know what you need, and we'll
Right.
support you in that way.
Right.
If you need time, if you need resources, whatever it is you need, we can help with that.
What's the best way to get an initial consultation?
Oh, yeah. So we have a form on our website. If you're kind of doing some stuff at night and researching, all hours of the day, you can fill that out. You can always call us during business hours, 8:30 to Friday at the office. And the telephone number for that should be in the comments.
Right.
So you can click there. And you can also send us an email, team@New Direction Family Law.
Cool. Great, guys. Thanks. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. Good information. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to leave us a review. You can visit us online at newdirectionfamilylaw.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at the Exit Strategy _podcast or email us at exitstrategy@newdirectionfamilylaw.com. We'll be back next week with more no bullshit content about life, divorce, parenting, relationships, and everything in between.